Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be talking about startups and their unique HR challenges.
Startups. Trendsetters who embody the economic buoyancy that certain pessimists claim is no more. But as they grow, hoping to become unicorns, they also go through quite a few crises.
The growth phases described by Grainer come with specific human resources challenges which apply to all growing companies. From founding through to the zenith of success,
Adventure always comes with its fair share of risk, even in HR. So, human resources challenges for startups, what's the story?
startups as we tend to define them. As a young, innovative company which usually raises capital in several steps, are growing companies with a certain number of unique features.
And the first among them starts with their founders. Though they are increasingly aware of the importance of quality human capital and employee engagement, there are often several difficulties to overcome.
Yes, they rarely feel the need to impose structure or develop formal HR practices. Sometimes they don't even have the resources because all of their cash goes to growth itself, paradoxically. A lot of founders see people as so crucial to their business that they decide to manage it themselves. But, while some people may be loath to admit it, human resources is a profession in its own right.
So, the question is, how quickly do the people in place realize that a structured HR department is becoming a necessity? Unfortunately, it seems that it's often a little too late.
But if you do it too soon, you introduce unnecessary rigidity. Finding the right moment is a delicate affair.
In other words, the sooner the charismatic visionary founder can plan for what will likely happen to his or her company, the better its chances of succeeding. Founders need to take into consideration the human reality, which may be more difficult to manage than expected.
Next, startups also go through differing financing phases, each with its own HR challenges. In the beginning, HR is mostly responsible for galvanizing people around a project with limited means. At that point, the strength of the project, the dream it represents, and the original means of rewarding employees are key to success.
But next comes the financing gap, which is full of worry and tension. It can undermine a team at a time when the human aspects are still managed intuitively.
And let's not forget that internal and external obligations, such as the need to structure the company once you reach a certain size, quickly take over. And yet, at the same time, growth requires flexibility, HR included.
There are also fears about a potential sale of the company. These fears can seriously undermine teams and create internal tension, particularly among partners. And there are also the cultural differences between the people who have been there from the start, pioneers driven by the adventure, and those who have arrived along the way and for whom it's a job like any other.
Sometimes there are even difficult moments you don't expect, like a need to say goodbye to employees who have been there since the beginning, not because they did something wrong, but because their skills and aspirations no longer fit with the company's new phase of development.
Or obligations imposed by investors who are thinking of the future and know the HR expectations of potential buyers, or those tied to going public, with all the requirements in terms of social risks and conformity with international standards.
And investors' interests may clash dramatically with those of founders and their teams. These differences can be significant sources of tension, as you can see. Startup HR isn't all rainbows and unicorns.
To recap, startups have unique HR challenges tied to their particularities. There are quite a few of them, from the founder's ability to professionalize and structure the company at the right time, to the HR specificities of each step in the financing process. When it comes to HR, amateurism and DIY are never good ideas. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short. Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.